Okay, guys, the back of your notes are a little different. Instead of finding the midpoint like we just did on the front, on number 1 here it says find the coordinates of A if M, -1, 2, M is actually our midpoint here. They give us our midpoint this time of AB, and then B has a coordinate of 3, -5. So it may help if you draw a little picture here to kind of see what's going on, a line. So I'm going to draw a picture, and there's one point. And this is going to be A, and this end point is going to be B. I know that B is 3, -5. And I also know that I have a middle point, a midpoint here. That is M, and it actually gives me the coordinate. It is -1, 2. Let's see. Negative. Okay, so it wants me to find what is the coordinate, the x and the y coordinate of A. I know an endpoint, I know a midpoint, I need this endpoint. So we can still use our midpoint formula. We've got to find two different numbers, an x value and a y value. So I'm going to split this in half so I can find my x and my y value. Okay, to find my x value for my A, we're still going to use our midpoint formula, which was the average. It was x1 plus x2 divided by 2. So I'm going to use that to find the x value. I'm going to do that part first. Now, what do we know? What can we plug in? We know our midpoint. What is our x value of our midpoint? It is -1. So we're going to say -1 equals x1 is 3 plus, I don't know what my second x value is. That's what we're trying to find. So plus x2 all over 2. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to solve this. Very easy to solve for x sub 2. I have to get rid of that denominator. So to get rid of that denominator, I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. So those cancel out. 2 times -1, I'm going to have to come over here, is -2 equals, and then this stays 3 plus x sub 2. Then I'm going to solve, get the x sub 2 by itself, so I'm going to subtract the 3 over. So x sub 2 is going to equal -5. So that's part of my answer. I have an x value of a coordinate and I have a y value. I need to find that y value now. So the y value here, we're going to use the same thing, the second part of the formula, which is y1 plus y2 over 2. So now we're going to plug in. What is the y value of my midpoint? 2 equals, y1 is -5 plus, I don't know what y2 is, all over 2. Now to solve this, I'm going to get rid of the denominator, so I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. Those cancel, which is going to give me 4 equals -5 plus y sub 2. I'm going to add that 5 over. And y sub 2 is going to equal 9. Now, what is my A value though? My total answer here is going to be A is the point. The x value is -5, 9. And that is my answer. Okay, looking at 2, we're going to do the same exact thing. Find the coordinates of J. K is the midpoint, so I need to know K is the midpoint. L is an endpoint, and it has the coordinate of -8, 6. So if you need to, I'm going to come over here, draw you a picture. Okay. L here is going to be the point -8, 6. And then I have J is over here. I don't know what that point is. But then I have a midpoint that's K. And that's the point -5, 10. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing to find what this coordinate is here. I know my midpoint, so I'm going to divide this into two sections. I'm going to do two problems. The first one's going to be for my x. The x value of my midpoint is -5. So -5 equals, to find the x, I do x1 plus x2 over 2. x1 is going to be -8, because that's the x value of the endpoint, plus x2 all over 2. Now we're going to solve it. So we're going to multiply both sides by 2. We're going to get -10 equals -8 plus x2. Get that by itself. I'm going to add over the 8. And x2 is going to equal -2. So that's part of my answer. Now I got to get the y value of the coordinate. So the y value of the midpoint is 10. 10 equals, my y value here on my endpoint is 6 plus y2 all over 2. Again, I'm going to multiply to get rid of that 2 on the bottom. So that's going to give me 20 equals 6 plus y sub 2. I'm going to subtract that 6 over. 14 is going to equal y sub 2. So my ordered pair here is point J is going to equal, my x value is -2, comma, my y value is 14. So that is my ordered pair. Now you take a minute and you try number 3. Pause the video. Okay, check your number 3 really quick with the work that I have up here. And then we're going to move to number 4. Okay, on number 4, 5, and 6, these are still some more midpoint examples, but they're a little different. This time we're throwing in some expressions and things. If P is the midpoint of XY, then XP equals 8x minus 2 and PY is 12x minus 30. Find the value of x. Now all that doesn't make sense unless I draw a picture. P is the midpoint of XY. That means x and y are on the ends here. There's x, there's y, and P is going to be right here in between it. It tells me that XP is 8x minus 2. So I'm going to fill that in here. 8x minus 2. And PY, this distance, is 12x minus 30. Okay. So if P, to go through and work this, if P is in the middle, the midpoint, what does that mean about XP and PY? Well, we know that a midpoint divides it into two congruent parts. If XP and PY are congruent, that means that all we have to do is set them equal to each other to solve for x. So I can do that. 8x minus 2 is going to equal 12x minus 30. Subtract that 8x over. And I'm going to get -2 equals 4x minus 30. Add the 30 over. I'm going to get 28 equals 4x. Divide by the 4. And I get that x equals 7. And that's all they wanted me to do is find the value of x. So x equals 7. Okay, let's look at 5. If G is the midpoint of FH, okay, a lot going on, draw your picture. FH are my midpoints. F and H. G is the midpoint, so it's right in the middle. Now let's label with what we know. We know that FG, this part, is 14x plus 25. And we know that GH is 73 minus 2x. Find FH. Okay. So this time they want us to find the whole thing. Before we can find this whole distance, we need to know what x is so we can find each individual distance. Well, If G is the midpoint, then FG and GH are exactly the same. So I can set these two equations equal to each other. Okay, I can add the 2x over, which gives me 16x plus 25 equals 73. Subtract the 25 over, and we get 16x equals 73 minus 25 gives me 48. And divide both sides by 16. So I know that x equals 3. Okay, now if I want to find FH, this whole distance, I have to plug it in. So all I'm going to do is plug in 14 times 3 plus 25. That means that this distance here is 67, and then 73 minus 6, it's going to be, this distance is 67. Are they supposed to be congruent? The same thing? Yes. So FH is going to be 67 plus 67. So FH is going to equal 134. Okay, now you stop, pause the video, and try number 6. Okay, take a minute and check your number 6. When you're finished checking number 6, make sure you do your homework page tonight for homework.